There are places people don't visit on vacation. Places no one mentions at bedtime stories. Places the planet itself seems to want to forget, but can't. They exist, they're real, and they're waiting. Today, we're going somewhere most people will never go. Not because it's forbidden, not because it's dangerous, but because the atmosphere of these places presses down on you, breaks something inside, forces you to ask just how fragile the world really is, the world we take for granted. Welcome to Planet Instinct. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. We make documentaries that change the way you see the world. This one is no different. Tell us in the comments what city or country you're watching from. It matters to us, knowing we're in this together, even when we're talking about the darkest places on Earth. On the 26th of April, 1986, at 1:23 in the morning, reactor number 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant exploded. You may have heard that sentence many times before. Read it again, slowly. Not as a historical fact, as a moment. The moment that split thousands of lives into before and after, into there and here, into then and never. Because that is exactly what happened. For nearly 50,000 people living in Pripyat, the clocks stopped on that April morning, and they never started again. Pripyat was built in 1970, purpose-built for workers at the nuclear plant. It was a model Soviet city, young, modern, well-kept. The average age of its residents was around 26. Young engineers, technicians, teachers, doctors, their children. The planned economy gave them stability, good apartments, steady work, leisure time. Pripyat had 15 primary schools, several secondary schools, 5 kindergartens, a palace of culture with a cinema that seated 1,000 people, 3 indoor swimming pools, an amusement park, complete with a Ferris wheel that was scheduled to open just days after the disaster. It never opened. The residents of Pripyat didn't know about the explosion for nearly a full day. The authorities said nothing. People went out into the streets, sent their children to school, carried on with ordinary life, while invisible, odorless, lethal particles of radioactive dust drifted through the air. Some residents remember seeing a bright glow over the plant that night. Some felt a metallic taste in their mouths. But no one understood the scale of what was happening. They weren't told. The evacuation didn't begin until the evening of the 27th of April, more than 36 hours after the explosion. Residents were told it was a temporary measure, 3 days at most. Take your documents, a little food, the bare essentials. You'll be back soon. Nobody came back. The buses took the people away. Abandoned apartments were left with half-eaten meals on the tables, children's drawings on the refrigerators, coats hanging by the door. Someone left a fish tank. The fish died later. Someone left a cat. The cats were eventually shot to prevent them from carrying contamination beyond the zone. In one apartment, investigators found an abandoned wedding photograph. In another, a child's diary. The last entry dated the 25th of April, 1986. The exclusion zone today covers roughly 2,600 square kilometers. Inside it, dozens of villages and settlements, not just Pripyat. Abandoned farms, rusting machinery used during the cleanup, machinery that can never be removed because it's too radioactive. The vehicle graveyard at Rasuka, is one of the most haunting places in the zone. Hundreds of helicopters, armored vehicles, and fire trucks lined up in open fields, slowly becoming rust and bone. Radiation levels there are still high enough in places that standing nearby for more than a few minutes is unsafe. The reactor itself sits under a sarcophagus. First, a hastily built concrete shell from 1986. Then, from 2016 onward, the new safe confinement, a massive steel arch as tall as a 25-story building. Under that arch, still hot, still lethal graphite and fuel. Full decay will take thousands more years. The Chernobyl disaster didn't end. It's still happening, just more slowly than it did in 1986. Meanwhile, nature has moved back in. The exclusion zone has developed a unique ecosystem. Wolves, elk, lynx, wild boar, even bears, all of them have appeared here over the past few decades. Without humans, nature recovers faster than scientists expected. That's beautiful. That's hopeful. But it's also endlessly sad. Because the price of this return of nature is a human tragedy whose true scale is still debated. Official figures list a few dozen direct deaths. Independent research points to tens of thousands of deaths linked to radiation exposure. Today, Pripyat is open to tourists. Every year, thousands of people come here, with cameras, with Geiger counters, with a sense of bearing witness to something that matters. And almost all of them describe the same thing: the silence. Not dead silence. There are birds, there's wind, there's the rustle of leaves in overgrown courtyards, but no human life. And that absence is heavier than any sound. The amusement park in the center of Pripyat, the yellow rusting Ferris wheel, cabins blanketed in moss, carousels with peeling paint. This place has become the symbol of Chernobyl. It's the most photographed spot, the most used in films and TV series. And that makes sense, because it's the essence of the tragedy. A place built for joy that never got to be joyful. Happiness stolen before it ever had the chance to happen. Is there something to take away from this story? Yes. A lesson about the price of silence, about what happens when the system matters more than the people, about how some mistakes can't be fixed. They can only be lived with. More precisely, lived alongside. At a distance of 30 kilometers, behind a perimeter of barbed wire, until the radiation levels drop to something approaching safe, which will happen in approximately 20,000 years. There are cities that are hard to live in, cities that are dangerous to live in, and there are cities that, by every medical standard, every environmental index, every measure of common sense, shouldn't be lived in at all. Norilsk is one of them. And yet people live there. 180,000 of them, every day, year after year. In a city that officially ranks among the 10 most polluted places on the planet, according to international environmental organizations. In a city where the air sometimes smells so strongly of sulfur that your throat burns just walking outside. In a city where the trees surrounding the industrial facilities have long since died, not dried out, not cut down, dead, poisoned by acid rain. Black trunks, stripped of bark, stripped of leaves, stripped of life, standing like silent monuments. Welcome to Norilsk. Norilsk sits in Krasnoyarsk Krai, above the Arctic Circle. It's one of the northernmost cities on Earth, and one of the most isolated. There are no roads connecting it to the rest of Russia. The only way in is by plane, or, during a brief summer window, by the Yenisei River. Winter here lasts 8 to 9 months. Temperatures drop to -50 degrees Celsius. The polar night lasts 45 days. The polar day, 37. Winter winds can be strong enough to knock a person off their feet. Residents walk the streets holding onto ropes strung between buildings to keep from falling. But the climate isn't what makes Norilsk truly grim. The climate is just harshness. People can adapt to harshness. What makes Norilsk what it is its industry. More precisely, its consequences. The Norilsk Nickel Combine, one of the largest metallurgical complexes in the world, operates here. It produces a significant share of the world's nickel, cobalt, and palladium. Its strategic production, its enormous wealth, its thousands of jobs in a city where there are no other jobs, and its emissions. Massive, catastrophic, never-ending emissions. Every year, the facilities of Norilsk release approximately 2 million tons of sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere. To put that in perspective, that's roughly the same as the entire country of Canada, a nation of 40 million people. One city, 2 million tons of sulfur a year. When the wind shifts and the emissions drift over residential neighborhoods, locals describe it simply: it stinks again today. Children grow up knowing, if you smell sulfur, better stay inside. Not because their parents told them, because they figured it out themselves. The soil around Norilsk is saturated with heavy metals to a depth of several meters. The radius of ecological damage around the city, by various estimates, extends from 20 to 50 kilometers. Within that zone, almost no living trees remain. Shrubs are stunted and misshapen. Grass is sparse. The ground in some areas has an unnatural bluish or orange tint, the residue of settled metal compounds. The rivers around Norilsk, the Dodykan, the Ambarnaya, periodically change color. In 2016, the Dodykan turned red, literally blood red. Industrial waste had entered the water. Images circulated worldwide. Local residents shrugged. Happens sometimes. They're used to it. In May of 2020, one of the worst industrial accidents in modern Russian history occurred. At one of Nornickel's facilities, approximately 21,000 tons of diesel fuel spilled from a storage tank. The fuel reached the rivers. The contaminated area stretched for nearly 200 kilometers. The waters of the Ambarnaya and parts of the Arctic zone ran red. The regional governor called it a non-standard situation. Nornickel paid the largest environmental fine in Russian history, around 146 billion rubles. It helped little. The fuel remains in the soil and water. Cleanup on that scale in permafrost conditions could take decades. The permafrost is a story in itself. Norilsk stands on it. Everything here, buildings, roads, pipelines, rests on pilings driven into frozen ground. That worked for decades, but the climate is changing. The permafrost is thawing. The pilings are losing their grip. According to Russian scientists, more than 50% of buildings in Norilsk have structural damage linked to permafrost degradation. Some have already been demolished. Others stand visibly tilted, with cracked walls and warped entryways. The city is literally sinking into the ground. What is happening to the health of people living under these conditions? Official statistics are classified. Norilsk is a closed city. Foreign nationals require special permission to enter. Independent medical research is extremely limited. But what data does emerge points to elevated rates of cancer, respiratory disease, and cardiovascular conditions. Life expectancy in Norilsk is below the Russian national average. By how much? Exact figures aren't available. Residents know all of this. Many speak about it openly. You can't live here, but we live here. That's the phrase journalists who manage to gain access to the city hear again and again. Salaries at the Combine are high by Russian standards. Housing is cheap. Moving to the mainland means losing everything and starting from zero. Many were born here. Their parents were born here. Norilsk is their home, whatever that means, and they won't leave it. That is the particular, suffocating tragedy of Norilsk. Not that people don't know, but that they do know and can't leave, or won't, or see no other way out. It's a trap built not of walls and fences, but of economics, of habit, of the absence of choice. Norilsk's history goes back to the Gulag. The city was founded and built by prisoner labor. In 1935, a forced labor camp was established here that became one of the largest in the entire Gulag system. Between 300,000 and 500,000 people passed through Norilsk by various estimates. Tens of thousands died from cold, from hunger, from grueling work in the mines and on construction sites. The city itself, its first buildings and infrastructure, was built by their hands. By the hands of people, many of whom didn't survive to see what they had built. The memorial to Gulag victims in Norilsk is small and modest. It stands on the edge of the city. Few tourists reach it. But those who do say it weighs heavier than anything else. Heavier than the poisoned rivers, heavier than the dead trees, heavier than the smell of sulfur. Because here is where it all began. The first layer of tragedy, the one all the others were built upon. Norilsk is a city of contradictions, one of the most resource-rich industrial cities in Russia, and one of the worst places to live. A place where enormous money is made, and where that money barely touches the reality of ordinary people. A place founded on forced labor, and still operating by a logic that hasn't changed as much as anyone would like to believe. It exists. It works. People live there. And in that lies its deepest darkness. Not in ruins, not in silence, not in emptiness, but in the fact that life here continues, in spite of everything, as if this is simply how it's supposed to be. Some disasters happen in seconds. Explosions, earthquakes, tsunamis. A clear line between before and after. And then there are disasters that unfold over decades, that happen so slowly that every year it seems like nothing much has changed. Just a little less water, just the shoreline pulling back, just fishermen moving away, looking for other work. These things happen. And only when you compare maps 40 years apart do you understand. The sea is gone. It was killed, slowly, deliberately, by human hands. The Aral Sea is one of the greatest environmental catastrophes in human history, and one of the most devastating stories about what happens when progress charges forward with no regard for nature. In 1960, the Aral Sea was the fourth largest lake in the world. It covered roughly 68,000 square kilometers, about the size of Ireland. In some places, it reached depths of 70 meters. More than 20 species of fish lived in its waters. The fishing industry employed thousands of people. The cities on its shores, Erosk, Moynak, thrived. Fish from the Aral Sea was shipped across the entire Soviet Union. Then, Soviet planners decided to turn the republics of Central Asia into a cotton empire. Cotton needs water, a lot of water. The two rivers feeding the Aral Sea, the Amu Darya and the Sir Darya, were diverted through a network of canals. The water went to the fields. None reached the sea. The sea began to shrink, slowly, a few centimeters a year, then a few meters. The shoreline retreated. Fishermen noticed they had to walk farther to reach the water, then much farther. Then they drove trucks to the shore. Then they stopped going altogether. By 2000, the sea had lost more than 80% of its volume. By 2007, it had split into several isolated bodies of water, the largest of which was, compared to what had come before, a puddle. Where the sea once was, there is now a desert, a salty, toxic desert. Decades of irrigation had saturated the water with pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers. When the water receded, all of it was left behind in the salt at the bottom. Wind picks up that salt and carries it hundreds of kilometers. Within a radius of 300 kilometers from the former shoreline, there are elevated levels of toxic compounds in the air, the water, and the soil. Among the people living in this zone, researchers have documented abnormally high rates of cancer, respiratory disease, and infant mortality. And in the port of Moynak, a city that once stood on the shore of a sea, ships stand now. Rusting, decaying fishing vessels. Standing in the middle of a desert, on the dry, white, salt-crusted floor. The sea left, the ships stayed. There's nowhere to take them, no one to do it, no reason to try. They've been standing there for decades, a monument to human arrogance, a gravestone over a buried sea. The ship graveyard at Moynak has become one of the most photographed places in Central Asia. People travel there specifically to see it, to feel it. The photographs look surreal. Vessels built for water, standing in a desert under a blazing sky, surrounded by white salt. Beautiful, terrifying, impossible to forget. The northern section of the Aral Sea, the small Aral in Kazakhstan, is recovering. The Kokeral Dam, built in 2005, held the water back. Levels have risen. Fish have returned. It's a rare example of what can happen when human intervention goes right. Not everything is lost. But the southern section, the large Aral in Uzbekistan, is dead. Permanently. That is not going to change. This is what it means to kill a sea. Not with an explosion, not with a disaster, just with a decision, a signature on a document. thousands of kilometers of canals, decades of indifference. One of the harshest lessons the 20th century ever taught us. There are places whose names speak for themselves. Death Valley is one of them. But even if you've heard that name 1,000 times, you probably don't understand what it really means. Because to truly understand Death Valley, you have to be there. And even then, the mind struggles to accept what the eyes are seeing. This is the hottest place on the surface of the earth, the driest place in North America, one of the lowest points in the Western Hemisphere, 3 records in one location, and none of them are something to celebrate. Each one is a warning. Death Valley sits on the border of California and Nevada in the Mojave Desert. It stretches roughly 220 kilometers from north to south. The mountain ranges on either side form a natural trap. Hot air sinks into the valley, heats even further from the scorched floor, and can't escape. The mountains hold it in. Scientists call this a thermal trap effect. For living things, it has a simpler name: death. On the 10th of July, 1913, the air temperature here reached 56.7 degrees Celsius. That is the official world record, recognized by the World Meteorological Organization. But air temperature doesn't tell the whole story. Ground surface temperatures in Death Valley during summer months exceed 90 degrees Celsius. 90 degrees. The temperature of a hot cup of tea. The temperature at which an egg begins to cook. That is the surface you're walking on. Humidity in the valley during summer drops to 0. Literally, 0%. Under these conditions, sweat evaporates from the skin instantly, with no time to cool the body. A person loses water at a rate that outpaces any ability to replace it by drinking. At temperatures above 50 degrees with 0 humidity, an unprepared person without water can lose consciousness in less than 20 minutes and die within a few hours. The name Death Valley was coined in 1849. A group of gold prospectors heading to California during the gold rush tried to cut their journey short by crossing through the valley. It was a mistake. Several members of the group died. When the survivors finally made it out, one of them turned back and said, "Goodbye, Death Valley." The name stuck. Since then, the valley has claimed its toll. Tourists who arrived without enough water. Drivers whose cars broke down in the middle of nowhere in July heat. Adventurers who underestimated the scale of the danger. Death Valley National Park, established in 1994, records several deaths every year, from heat stroke, from dehydration, from people who simply didn't believe it was serious. It is serious. Entirely serious. But Death Valley is not only death. That's its central paradox. It's one of the most beautiful places on the planet. The Mesquite Flat sand dunes, white sandy waves rising up to 30 meters high. Badwater Basin, a blinding white salt flat sitting 86 meters below sea level. Zabriskie Point's colored rock formations, layers of yellow, orange, red, and purple laid down over millions of years. Sunsets here are explosions of color that stop your breath. And in that beauty, a particular loneliness, a particular weight. Because the beauty here is untouchable. It looks at you, but it won't let you in. Step out of the air-conditioned car, take a few steps on that gleaming white salt, and you understand. You don't belong here. You're a guest who's being tolerated. For now. There is life here. Astonishing, improbable life. The desert horned lizard, capable of reabsorbing moisture from its own urine. The desert tortoise, which burrows underground for 9 months of the year. The tiny desert pupfish, a species that lives only in the valley's few remaining springs and nowhere else on Earth. These creatures are the product of millions of years of adaptation to conditions that should have made life impossible. They are the victors. We, by comparison, are overconfident visitors with water bottles and GPS units. Death Valley teaches one thing. The Earth is not obligated to be kind to us. It was here long before us. It will be here long after. And we are simply temporary occupants of a space it has, for now, chosen to allow us. At the foot of Mount Fuji, there is a forest. At first glance, ordinary. Dense, green, filled with silence. Moss covers the roots and the rocks. Light barely filters through the canopy. The air is cool and damp. Tourists come here with cameras and backpacks, planning a beautiful day in nature. But right at the entrance to the forest, there is a sign, in Japanese and in English. Your life is a precious gift from your parents. Think of them. Think of the pain you would cause. Don't make this decision alone. Call a helpline. This forest is called Aokigahara, and it is one of the darkest places on the planet. Not because it's shadowy, not because it's dangerous, but because people walk into it and don't come back. Aokigahara is a dense forest covering roughly 35 square kilometers. It grew over hardened lava fields on the northwestern slope of Mount Fuji. The lava base makes the ground rigid and uneven. Tree roots spread across the surface, creating twisted, almost otherworldly landscapes. Magnetic anomalies in the lava rock affect compasses. They don't work here. GPS loses signal under the dense forest canopy. Phones lose reception. Walk deep enough, and you're in a space with no landmarks, no connection to the outside world. Aokigahara is the second most frequent site of suicide in the world, after the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. Dozens of bodies are found here every year. In some years, more than 100. Local authorities stopped publishing statistics, fearing the Werther effect, copycat suicides. But the scale of the tragedy is well known. The phenomenon runs deep into Japanese culture and history. In Japanese folklore, Aokigahara is associated with yurei, the restless spirits of the dead. Legends say that in times of famine, this forest was once a site of ubasute, the practice of leaving elderly or infirm family members to die in the mountains or woods. Whether this is history or myth, scholars debate. But the image of the forest as a place where people go to die became rooted in the Japanese collective consciousness long before it became a documented fact. In 1960, Japanese author Seicho Matsumoto published a novel in which two lovers go to Aokigahara to die together. The book became a bestseller. The image took hold. Then in 1993, another writer, Wataru Tsurumi, published a book called The Complete Manual of Suicide, which described Aokigahara as the perfect place to die. The book sold in enormous numbers. It was banned from libraries, but too late. Volunteers and park rangers regularly patrol Aokigahara. Signs with helpline numbers are posted on trees along the trails. Some of the people who came here intending not to leave did leave. Because of a chance encounter with a ranger, because of a phone call, because of something without a name, something that, at the right moment, pulled them back from the edge. The forest itself is beautiful. That's important to understand. It doesn't look threatening. It's quiet, green, peaceful. Perhaps that's its particular cruelty. It receives people gently, doesn't frighten, doesn't push away. It simply accepts. Local guides tell visitors, if you see a ribbon or a rope stretched between two trees, it means someone left it to find their way back, or so that others could find them. Don't touch it. Don't follow it deeper into the forest. Just leave it. Aokigahara is not an evil forest. It's a witness, a silent witness to human despair. And perhaps that's why this place weighs so heavily, because here, in this silence, behind every tree, is someone's story that came to an end. If you or someone you know is going through a hard time, please talk to someone. That matters. It's not weakness, it's strength. Beneath your feet, right now, things may be happening that you know nothing about. Geological processes, chemical reactions, slow changes invisible from the surface. That's normal. That's the planet, living its own life. But what if beneath your city, there is fire? Real fire. Fire that has been burning for over 60 years and shows no sign of stopping. This is not a metaphor. This is Centralia. Centralia was a small mining town in the state of Pennsylvania. In the early 20th century, it produced anthracite, hard, high-quality coal. At its peak, around 2,500 people lived here. A typical American town: churches, schools, shops, a local bar, an annual 4th of July parade. In May of 1962, the town council decided to burn trash at a dump located near an abandoned coal mine. Standard practice at the time. The fire was lit and never fully extinguished. Flames crept underground, reached the mine, found the coal, and didn't stop. Since then, an unbroken underground fire has been burning beneath Centralia for more than 60 years. Scientists' estimates of how much coal remains in the seams vary widely, but even the most optimistic projections say the fire will continue for at least another 250 years. Some say 1,000. For the first few years, residents barely noticed anything different. Occasionally, smoke rose from cracks in the ground. Occasionally, an unpleasant smell. Occasionally, the ground underfoot felt warm. But nothing serious, right? People went about their lives. Then the problems started. Serious ones. In 1979, the owner of a local gas station lowered a thermometer into an underground fuel storage tank and found the temperature inside was 78 degrees Celsius. The gasoline was on the verge of igniting. In 1981, a 12-year-old boy fell into the earth. The ground beneath him simply gave way, opening a pit nearly 15 meters deep, billowing hot carbon monoxide. He was pulled out in time. His uncle grabbed his arms right at the edge. But the message was clear. The town was dying from the inside out. The government allocated funds for relocation. Most residents left. Houses were demolished one by one. By 1992, the population of Centralia had fallen from 2,500 to a few dozen. By 2020, 5 people were officially registered as residents. 5 people in a town with an inferno burning beneath it. Today, almost nothing remains of Centralia. Empty blocks, grass-covered foundations where houses once stood. A shattered highway, Route 61, buckled and cracked by the shifting, superheated ground. Smoke rises from cracks in the asphalt and the earth, sometimes steam. In winter, snow melts around these spots, even when everything else is covered in white. The ground is warm. The ground is on fire. The town's zip code, 17927, technically still exists. Legally, Centralia is still a city. In reality, it's a wasteland with fire raging underneath. A fire that people started by accident. A fire that cannot be put out. A fire that will outlast everyone who ever lit it. Centralia inspired the creators of the Silent Hill video game and film franchise, a ghost town swallowed by fog and despair. But the real Centralia is more frightening because it's real. Every one of these places remembers, holds on, refuses to let us forget. And perhaps that is their greatest value, not as tourist destinations, but as mirrors in which we see what we do, what we are capable of doing, and what we can choose not to do. Our planet is not a backdrop. It lives, it remembers, and it is watching us. If this film moved you, leave a like. Tell us in the comments what city or country you're watching from. It matters to us to know we're in this together. Subscribe to Planet Instinct so you don't miss the next episode. Take care of yourselves and take care of the planet.